Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Justice Talk, where it's just us talking.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Justice Talk, where it's just us talking. Deputy Kosha Hayden, Public Information Officer for the Sheriff's Office. I hope everyone enjoyed our last podcast, Rules of the Road. It was really a hot topic and got a lot of great feedback. All right, so why are we here today? Well, the start of school is just around the corner, and lots of things have changed in the last few months regarding school safety. The Sheriff's Office has been working really hard to make sure our schools are a safe place for those that attend the schools, work there, and visit. Today we have Sheriff Tony Spurlock here. He's going to give everyone an update on the school resource program and what has changed since the STEM shooting. Sheriff, good morning. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Thanks, Coach. I'm doing well. So this is one of those kind of topics that you really have to go to the past to get a real good sense of where we are today. And when you think about school resource officers, in the early 80s, we started to put school resource officers in our high schools here in Douglas County. But let's go back.
Okay.
Remember, in the 80s, this was a
long time ago.
This was a community that was growing,
right,
and
yep.
the things were different then. We had one SRO. We had Douglas County High School. That's for all you listeners out there that know the history of Douglas County, and now here we are today. A complete different community, and we address it a lot differently. And if you just go back in memory lane a little bit, wasn't until like the late 90s when we really started to put SROs in the other high schools. And now before this new school year, we had 9 SROs working in our schools across the Douglas County, unincorporated Douglas County area. And unfortunately, things change because of those tragedies. Sometimes things change because of just, hey, this is a new marketing plan. Unfortunately, here we are faced with a shooting at charter school at STEM, and we really now need to make a difference in all of our schools and what we're going to do to help do a couple things. One, first, make our kids feel safe and our teachers feel safe, but also make sure that we have a really good security envelope for these young people to learn and to start their lives and to allow the teachings to have a safe place. So to allow the schools to have a place where we can make it safe. So here we are today. And what's going to happen, school starts on August 7th, everyone here. So a lot of the schools here in Douglas County start between the 7th and the 17th, around that area. So I'm sure you got it from the traffic talk, use caution around the school areas. But let's talk about the SRO program, and that is we are now going to put SROs, and we're going to tell you about our plan, our security plan to a degree, but we're going to put SROs in all of our high schools, all of the middle schools that are either adjacent to a high school or middle schools that are offset. And then we have our school marshal program, which will have an enhanced school resource plan for our elementary schools, and our at least a couple charter schools, 3 charters and 1 private school. So when you look at the layout for our schools here in Douglas County, we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood about 24 new or 24 existing SROs that will be out there doing security and education and community relations in our schools and in around our schools, which I think are going to make a huge difference. Because as we go back, if you want to have a thriving community, you have to have a thriving school district, because that's where people are going to bring their kids to grow. And we're in Douglas County. We have a great plan globally. We have a great school district. We have great communities, and we have a place where they can go to school and learn. Businesses will come here and thrive and sell their products to all the families that are coming here. And law enforcement collectively in Douglas County, with our partners in the municipalities, make sure that it's safe to do so while you're here in Douglas County, while you're visiting, living, and aspiring to do different things as our young people do in our schools. So we're really excited about this new plan. There's a lot of things that are going to be coming up, and you're going to hear from our Lieutenant Lori Bronner, and 2 new sergeants are going to talk about really the nuts and bolts of the SRO program. And I hope that you get a lot out of that. Please respond to us if you have any questions, concerns. And we're really looking forward to having some engagement, continuing this project of making sure that our schools are safe here in Douglas County.
That's good. Do you want to break it down for the listeners? I mean, I know that we've changed some numbers. I mean, I know that the commissioners as well as the school district, a lot of different meetings, and we had a school safe committee that got together. And so do you want to break it down for the listeners on how many we think we're going to add, or what the sheriff's office has done in preparation for the new school year in regards to how many more we've added?
Well, what we have done is we went from 9 SROs to really 24 SROs.
Yeah.
So we have doubled plus our SRO program in all of the schools here in the unincorporated Douglas County. Okay. Now, again, it's important to know that we continue to partner with our local municipalities and make sure that the schools that are in their municipalities, we're doing things together. So what we hope to do with these is enhance the school safety program, working with the school district, working with the other law enforcement agencies, and our private and charter schools to provide the very best security plan that we can for the kids while they're in school.
That sounds great. So just to sum up real quick before we go to our break, we've got a lot of new SROs coming on. We're going to have a great plan for the new school year. Hiring. What have we done in hiring? How do we get these new people here?
So what we've done so far is we've recruited from all the way outside the state of Colorado, inside law enforcement here in the metro area and in the state of Colorado, to bring people here. And what we're trying to do at this case is I believe we have like 5 officers that we're bringing in that we're going to bring from other jurisdictions. Great. So that's really good from recruiting perspective. But what the other point is that we are really focusing on making sure that we have the very best. And so we did some testing inside here in our own office. And in the end, we'll have 24 new SROs. There's some add-on in that from a management, so we're adding on another sergeant because that number we need to do, and then we added a detective on as well in our juvenile unit to make sure that we can handle just kind of the workload that sometimes happens when you have growth and you have people there sharing information.
That makes sense.
There's a lot of things that are happening, and I know that the lieutenant and the sergeants are really going to touch on some of the things that I think that people are going to be very excited about. Yeah. So I'm very excited for this program, and I'm looking forward to hearing for what the lieutenants and sergeants got to say.
All right. Thanks, Sheriff, so much for the update. We look forward to really great things coming up in the next school year. We're going to take a break here in a few seconds. We're going to take a Dirty 30 crime prevention tip break, and then we're going to turn it over to our next guests, Lieutenant Lori Bronner and Sergeant Todd Tucker. Take it away, guys.
Hello, it's Deputy Brian McKnight, and it's time for the Crime Prevention Dirty 30. It's 30 seconds of tips protecting yourself from those dirty criminals. The start of the school year is right around the corner, and parents need to think about safety for their kids. Here are some back-to-school safety tips. Plan a walking route to school or to the bus stop and walk that route with your children beforehand. Teach your children to recognize and obey traffic signals, signs, and pavement markings. If your child bikes to school, make sure they wear their helmet. Be sure your children walk to and from school with siblings, friends, or neighbors. Teach your child never to talk to strangers, accept rides, or gifts from strangers. Obey school zone speed limits and follow the school drop-off procedure. And that is this episode's Dirty 30.
All right, welcome back. That was a great Dirty 30 crime prevention tip. Now let's move on to our next special guests, Lieutenant Lori Bronner and Sergeant Todd Tucker with the School Resource Officer Program. Lieutenant Lori Bronner, go ahead and give us a little history of yourself before we get into our subject.
Sure. Good morning to all of our listeners out there. As Kosha said, my name is Lori, and I'm a lieutenant over the juvenile unit. That incorporates the school resource officers, the YES program, the juvenile detectives, and anything basically that has to do with the youth in our community that the sheriff's office is involved with. I started off with the agency many moons ago, 22 years ago, and I kind of moved around the departments. And a few years ago, about 3.5, 4 years ago, the sheriff tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to be the SRO sergeant. So I was in that capacity for a couple years ago. And then August of 2018, the sheriff's office created the juvenile unit where he promoted me and put me the lieutenant over it. So that's how I got to my position today.
Well, excellent. Lori, I've known you for a long time, and you are definitely where you should be. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
And right below you is Sergeant Todd Tucker, who you also supervise. Sergeant Tucker, why don't you give us a little rundown on yourself?
Well, thanks for having me. Again, my name is Todd Tucker. I started my law enforcement career back in Maryland in 1996. When I came to Douglas County here in 2003, I've worked in patrol. I did a stint at the DEA, traffic, I'm in patrol, and now my newest assignment has been the sergeant of the SRO unit.
And I don't know, did you mention that also you did K-9? Were you?
I did. That was probably one of my longest stints here.
Yeah.
I was in K-9, and I'm a K-9 sergeant as well, and the department trainer.
Yep. Well, I've known you a long time, and you do a great job. You guys are definitely great in the positions you're at, and they're really lucky to have you. All right, let's just get into it. Lieutenant Bronner, let's tell the listeners, what is a school resource officer?
Okay. School resource officer is a fully sworn law enforcement officer. So in Douglas County, because we're a sheriff, it's a deputy versus a peace officer in the city. So it's a fully formed, sworn-in law enforcement officer deputy. It's gone through the basic road FTO program. They know how to handle the normal crimes. They're certified. But on top of that, then they also become experts in dealing with juvenile laws, and then go in and work with the kids. But most importantly, not only do they know the laws, but then their job is really to go into the schools and be part of that community. And when I say be part of the community, they immerse themselves in it. They're part of the administration. They get to know the kids, the parents, the vibes and stuff of that community. So to know your kids that are in trouble, to know, just to help them along, mentor them, be the law enforcement agency that's there if they need law enforcement, but most importantly is to create that gap and that bridge between law enforcement and the community, and know that we're a person that you can come to when you need assistance.
Excellent. That's a great breakdown. I've been asked the question quite a few times on if a school resource officer is actual sworn officer, so perfect answer. Let's turn it over to Sergeant Tucker. Lieutenant Bronner talked a lot about what a school resource officer does, but what type of training do they go through to get to the point to be successful in school?
Well, first and foremost, they go through the patrol program. It's kind of the entrance into the SRO. They go through their patrol FTO, and they get a good grasp of life in general, basically out in the city, what it's like to be a patrol officer. After that, you got to like kids. That's a big thing.
That's
You've
helpful.
got to have their demeanor's one of being very patient, because in SRO, they have to be the counselor. Sometimes they have to be the parent. They have to be the voice of reason.
Right.
And those qualities. And then once they're selected, we send them to a week-long SRO school. It's just the meat and potatoes, if you will.
Right.
And then we have our own FTO program. The main difference is between patrol and the SRO is it's still out in the community, but they have their own city, if you will. Our average high school has 2,200 students. So their district beat is within that high school, and they handle everything, not just criminal stuff. I mean, like I said, they mentor, they coach, they do all kinds of things. But they're inside of a school that has really its own city, 2,200 kids.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's something good for our listeners to know, that to look at it that way, that it's their own little city. Because I know many, many years ago, maybe when Lieutenant Bronner was even an explorer with the office, school resource officers, I don't think took reports. I mean, I think they taught some safety classes, but it definitely has evolved over the years. And that's good for our listeners to know. Well, Lieutenant Bronner, why don't you walk us through a day for an SRO? Well, what's their day like?
Well, I'm going to throw out a little known fact before we get in there. So I did actually graduate from a school here in Douglas County a few moons back. And actually one of our current captains, Captain Duffy, was my school resource officer back in the day.
That's really
so
cool.
That was my first interaction, was meeting with him when a report was filed in my school and I was a witness.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like, now you bring it up, it's kind of funny to think about the full circle of, meeting the captain that I work with now was an SRO, and now I'm over the SROs.
That's good.
But go back to your question. A day for the SROs it's never the same. Just like a life in patrol, you never know what's going to happen. happen. Things to think about is that your SROs are at the schools when the kids are there. So if school is in session, our goal is always to have an SRO on campus. And, they'll start the days there and they'll end the day there as well. So a somewhat typical day, they're going to get in, they're, just the normal thing, getting in, checking and finding out what the culture of the day is. If there's already trouble that's brewing, so maybe something happened overnight that came to the school administration's attention, and if they need to talk to a kid about that and say, hey, we heard that you're maybe having trouble with something, whether sometimes maybe we got a tip the night before through like our text-a-tip program, and there might have been a bullying that was happening outside of school. But we know a lot of times what happened outside of school comes to school. So then we're going to address that, whether it's just administration level or if it rises to our level where we need to help them out. So they'll take care of any of the incidences like that. They're also maintaining visual and security of the school. So they'll meet with the school security staff, make sure that they're okay, any questions. They do outside perimeter checks inside, and walk in the halls, talking to the kids. Sometimes they may see maybe a student that looks upset and sitting off by themselves, so they'll go check on them and, kind of bridge that gap of, if we need to do a mentorship, maybe bring them into the counseling office so they can do some mentoring there, or, say, hey, here's a counselor, could you find out what's going on with this student? So that's a little bit of what they do. Obviously, we have, maybe some complaints that come from parking around the school or something like that. The SRO will also help patrol out with those kinds of things.
Oh, that's a good point. So anything that's outside, like traffic direction or things like the road in front of the school, who's in charge of traffic direction or traffic enforcement on that road? It's not the school resource officer.
It is not the school resource officer, and it's not the schools. That it actually is. That's still part of the road, is part of the sheriff's office and their responsibilities. So the school resource officer really needs to concentrate on the school grounds, the students, and the administrations in the building. Now, they do help out kind of like around, because obviously the schools wants to be a good community member and not to infringe on the ambiance, I guess you could say, around the neighborhoods. Yeah. And when we're some schools, there's a lot of parking issues when there's more kids that drive than there's parking spots. So we try and create that balance. We'll communicate with the community and stuff for the school. But ultimately, it is the patrol's responsibility to assist with those issues.
Oh, excellent. Good deal. So that's a great kind of like little breakdown of what they do during the day. But I know that a lot of these SROs are involved in lots of different things outside of normal school hours. Sergeant Tucker, kind of give us a rundown of what these guys do outside of normal school hours.
Yeah, there's a lot of extracurricular activities that occur with sports and clubs and those type of things. We have SROs that are coaches on the soccer teams. Really cool. We have SROs that after school, they're helping kids. They're teaching them how to drive in the parking lot. Their job, really doesn't stop. Once school, the hours, the final bell rings, the guys, they invest in their kids. They invest in the people in their community, in the school, and they're always, there to help. Like I said, whether it's, helping out with Booster Club, or they're helping coach, or they see, a kid needs some extra practice driving. They also follow up. A student wasn't in school today. They know that student. It's not uncommon for them to go out to their house, make a home visit, make sure everything's okay. Didn't see you today. Just wanted to follow up and make sure. So their job, really, on paper, I guess you could say it stops at, 3:00 when the bell rings. But they're invested in their schools, in their community. They work the football games. As you know, as a parent, school's pretty much a full-time job.
Absolutely.
Even when the final bell rings, there's stuff that needs to be done. There's meetings to be had. And it takes a lot of their time, but they give back. A lot of them are coaching and have done.
And they don't have to do that, right?
No, they don't. They don't have to. That's on them. They're volunteer for all of that.
That's really cool.
So it works out well, and they get to build the bond. Most people look at the SRO that they're just the cop in the school. They're just the guy I run to when I need help. And they've got so much more to give. They're great mentors. They invest back into the children. They get them back on the right road. And, they have hobbies and they have interests themselves. So they give back to the sports teams or the, particular clubs, that kind of stuff.
That's fabulous. Well, also, obviously school isn't year round, but what are some of the things, and either one of you guys, if you want to chime in on what they do during the summer months? Because I know that I've seen you, Sergeant Tucker, ride your bicycle, so I'm not sure if there's like something they do after during summer with bicycles, or is that during the school year as well?
Yeah, well, they ride their bikes during the school year as
Okay.
well. They patrol the exterior of their campuses and the neighboring shopping centers or anywhere that the children may, migrate throughout their day
for
or their
lunch
off
period or something,
periods
okay.
and things like that. The summer, it's a little different for them because, SROs need to be in their schools every day that school's
absolutely,
open.
yeah.
So they don't have the luxury of taking a lot of vacation time.
Okay.
During the school year, they basically follow the school calendar.
Right.
So a lot of them will try to take their family vacations over the summer, just like a normal family would. And then the ones that, work, we have a bike patrol, a bike unit. And then we'll try to hit the, like the town center is a great example. So there's a huge lunch rush that comes through there. We have the new addition of the new hospital over there.
Right.
So the population increases during the daytime. So the SROs have been tasked with patrolling those areas over there. So they get on their bikes and they cover that area and then respond to other calls. Just the other day, they had someone walked away from one of the nursing homes.
Oh, wow.
So they, were on the bike trails looking for that person. And
wow, that's
so
really
they kind of help where they can. I mean, it's
that's
hard to
great.
get a patrol car on all these miles and miles of bike paths that we have here in Highlands Ranch. So they will hit those, they'll enforce those, and just, blend in and build that relationship with the community.
Well, that's really cool.
Some of the SROs also want to keep that connection with the kids in the community even after summer hours. And 2 years ago, the SROs came together and they wanted to do a youth academy.
Oh, that's right.
So
yeah.
this year we had our second annual youth academy. Both classes have been a success. And we will do another one next year, and usually like the first full week after the school ends. And what that does at the Youth Academy is we open it up to usually between the age of 15 and like 17 years old. And the SROs get together and they work with other agency members within the agency, and they'll do tours of the Justice Center. So they get to see the dispatch, the jail, investigations, get to know the history of law enforcement in Douglas County. They get to do fun things like go to the Epic Sky ropes course.
Oh, yeah.
Do that, learn some team building. They get canine demonstrations. Crime Lab comes out and kind of talks about how we do Crime Lab. They do investigations. They get to practice doing plaster casting. So it's like there's a footprint and we need to lift it and preserve that. And so they'll
that's
pour
really-
the plaster and do that. Fingerprinting. The bomb guys will come out and talk. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's law enforcement related. We also will do bike patrol for the kids. So we let them ride our bikes and they'll put up the corn course because one of our our instructors is a PIMBA certified instructor. So it's
wow,
a
okay.
international police mountain bike instructor. So he's certified. And so we'll set up the cone course and say, okay, be able to ride the bikes. This is what an SRO has to do and get certified.
wow,
so we
yeah.
can't just say, hey, I rode a bike when I was a kid and get on it and
Yeah.
ride it. Our guys actually have to go to a 40-hour class and get certified to do it, where they got to learn to be able to ride in a circle within a box and that starts off as 9 feet and then gets shrunk to 8 feet.
Oh, wow.
So you have to know how to control your brakes and speed and stuff without crashing. So the kids get to do that and along other things.
Well, that sounds great. And I know that I saw the graduation of the Youth Academy, and I think that a couple kids in there also talked about wanting to maybe have a future in law enforcement. So I know that you also have a lot to do with the Explorer program. Do you want to talk just briefly about the Explorer program?
Sure, I'd love to. So the Explorers is kind of like a cadet program or people that are interested in law enforcement. You need to be either 15 or graduated from the 7th grade going into the 8th grade and then to 20 years old. So it's people that are interested in law enforcement. So through the Explorer program, we have monthly meetings, or actually it's bi-weekly unless we're getting ready for a competition, and then we'll meet weekly and we'll train. And so they'll learn everything from, the boring stuff of looking at CRS and the laws and
the
why we
laws,
can
yeah.
do stuff and not
I gotta
stuff.
know that. Yeah.
It's a little dry, but it's kind of interesting. It's eye-opening for them. And then obviously we'll show them how to do a traffic stop. We'll expand on the crime scenes. How do you go into a domestic violence call and answer that? And then also our volunteers, they're considered volunteers for us. So they help out around the office, if we need people. So one of the annual fundraisers that they'll go help the YES program with is the Elephant Rock Ride. And so they'll go
That's
out
a huge
there.
event.
It's a huge event. They'll go out there and they'll hand out fruit and drinks and nuts and stuff, snacks during that. But they also help out many other ways throughout the office. And then they get to do fun stuff. They'll go on a ride-alongs and stuff patrol. And then we also do competitions. And so we just got back a couple weeks ago from the regional competitions, which was held in Gunnison this year.
Right, yeah.
So we took 6 of our explorers that were able to go up there. We stayed at the college up there, lived in the dorms, and,
Oh, wow.
and they
Got a little
competed.
taste of college life there.
They got it, yes, in the older school and what it's like in the dorms and stuff. So they compete as individuals, and then there's one as a team event where it's all Douglas County members that we take up there. But then what's different about the regional one is then we want to show them what life is like in law enforcement. So say like you get to a scene and it's right on the county line. And you're like, okay, well, is it our agency or is it another agency or something big, and you got to work together. So then 2 days worth of different competition is they'll take an explorer from 5 different posts and put them together and say, now you guys got to go handle this call together and work together and communicate. So I'm happy to report that this year we went up there. We brought home 2 first place trophies, 2 second place, a 5th place, and then one of our SROs is one of the members of the LEPAC, which is a Law Enforcement Explorer Post Advisory Association of Colorado. He's a board member. He went up there as his last one. He retired from that position as vice chair, and he got an award for all of his commitment up there.
That's cool.
Along with myself, but 2 other SROs are also explorers. So this is another way that the SROs keep connected with the community, even when it's not necessarily school time. They still want to connect to the youth and mentor, and hopefully
Well, it's quite obvious that the school resource officers that you guys have in your schools are very committed. I mean, they do it because it's a passion, not because they feel like it's an assignment. So let me just ask Sergeant Tucker, you've only been in this unit for a little bit and been involved with schools, but what do you think is some of the issues that our students or our teens are facing right now? Some of the big things that your SROs are dealing with, whether it's on reports or problems that kids are having. What are just a couple of the big ones that we can tell the listeners that you guys see in schools?
Well, social media is probably our biggest issue.
How so? What do you mean?
Well, there's a lot of bullying, I guess you could say. People will get on the Snapchats and the Instagrams and, say not nice things or post pictures about people, and, and it offends and hurts feelings. And, if that's let go, then the problems just get bigger. I think with this generation, face-to-face communication is not something that occurs often. Like when we grew up, there was no cell phones.
Nope, you had
we
to
went
talk
outside
to
and played when the porch lights came on. You had to be home.
Yep.
And now people basically hide behind their social medias. They pick on other kids or people they don't like, and that creates problems which spill over into school. You get neighborhood disputes. Kids can't get along, and that they bring that drama to school.
So what do the SROs do? How do they help combat that?
We try to mediate the situations the best we can. As you know, parents don't take lightly to their kids being bullied or
absolutely. No, I understand.
Treated unfairly. And the SRO is their point of contact. They know that there's an SRO in the school, and they will usually come to school and report it. We do the best we can to mediate things.
Sure.
And then if it rises to the level of a crime, then obviously, we have to take enforcement action. But we're not just the heavy. We do try to mediate most of these problems and have the kids work it out and work on their social skills and realize that we don't all have to like each other. That's not natural. People are not going to like everyone. But you are going to have to, get along with them. It's like that when they grow up, they'll realize they're not going to like everyone at work, but they have to get along with them.
Get along and that's
so
true.
we try, and then, the newest thing is the vapes. That's a huge, concern and a huge problem. And the youth, it's like the trend. It's the cool thing to do, so they're doing it. They don't realize, what it's doing to their bodies and the outcome and what's going to happen to them 10 years from now.
So I think if they're not smoking, then it's okay.
Exactly. And so we deal a lot with, the vapes.
What do you guys do? Is there a ticket that's issued to them?
Yeah, so if they're caught with a vape, they will be issued a citation, a summons. They'll have to go to court.
And will their parents have to go with them?
Their parents go with them.
That's good to know.
And generally speaking, it helps. Some just don't care. They just keep doing their thing.
That's unfortunate.
And that's when the SRO, tries to step in as a mentor. Like I said, we're not just there to charge the kids. We don't just cut the summons and kick them out the door. They invest in them. They check in with them. How's it going? Here's some resources. Maybe you're already hooked on it. Maybe you just can't quit. So they try to get them hooked up with resources to get off of, the vapes. And It's just generational, issues. There's your natural, you get a fight every now and then. But the biggest problem we face is the social media. And as it's hard to manipulate Snapchat and to
Right.
go back and find evidence or to show, what's going on. So there's generally a bigger problem that you have to get
Sounds
to.
like it, yeah.
know?
Well, that's a couple good topics that our listeners are. It's good to know that the SROs know about it and they're trying to do something to combat it. And that way parents know that it's something that's addressed at school as well. But obviously they should be addressing these things at home as well.
Yeah, the parents need to be involved. I mean, honestly,
absolutely.
I have 3 teenagers, and if you sit at home and think, it's not my kid, he's not on Snap doing things inappropriately,
Right.
you're mistaken because it's happening. You're just, you're not a part of that part of their life. And, check their phones, look at their phones, be in touch. You don't have to
Yeah.
be their best friend, but you do have to be their
You
parent.
have to be their parent.
know?
I think that's key. It's like be a parent, that when you send your kids to school, they're going to be safe and we're going to do whatever we can in those school hours and help be a mentor. But obviously the parents need to take the number one role.
Yeah,
So
they have to buy off on that.
absolutely. Lieutenant Bronner, talking a little bit about some safety stuff. You are also in charge of many other youth programs. Give us just a quick snippet about YES, and you also, there's some programs coming up with the YES program.
Yeah, well, it's talking about the YES program and what we were just talking about is actually a good segue because the YES program also goes in and talks to the kids about issues that are kind of going on with the schools. So many years ago, the sheriff's office, we participated in the DARE program, and then we realized that just wasn't as effective as we wanted, and it was only one age group, and it was only one topic. We created the YES program. And with that program, yes, we talk about drugs, and we talk about vaping. And actually, one of the things that we actually are teaching the kids is when we go to it, because the scare tactics usually doesn't work. Don't do
Right.
this because you're going to get, lung disease or popcorn lung. With the vaping, you're going to get popcorn lung. They don't care about that because they're young and they're invincible. So it's going to work for a couple people, but for most of it, it doesn't work. So one of the things that we actually talk about when we're talking about vaping is, yes, it's a health issue, but that it also is, we talk and compare about how back in the day when tobacco was making the big push and they were advertising to the young, they're using characters like Joe Camel.
Right.
And it took years and years for that finally to get outlawed where you can't, campaign towards the kids and you can't do things. Unfortunately, the tobacco company has spent billions of dollars in the advertisement of the vaping because that is their new way in to normalize and make smoking cool. So they're advertising to the kids. And they're doing, the fun flavors like cotton candy and everything else. Right. But then on the same thing, what they're doing is they're making the fun flavors and they're making it where it's the cool thing to do. And to get around that, what we're telling the kids is, hey, look what they did 50 years ago. And I go, they're doing the same thing, and now it's just a different package on it. They're using you as this generation's guinea pigs because there's only a little bit of, some research that's been done on it. But we already know that it is a health issue. Like I said, the popcorn lung, that comes from the flavoring and stuff like that. But then we're also saying they're hooking you onto things. They're tricking you. They're using you and manipulating you. And when you say that you are being used, that actually is enforcing the kids to take a second look at what's happening. There's more kids that are like, no, I ain't doing this because you are telling me I want to, I'm doing this because I want to do. And that is actually sitting deeper with the kids, just than the traditional, this is a health issue and you shouldn't do it. But like, Todd mentioned that he's a parent and, he's kind of around our YES instructors, which I have 2 YES, correction 3, that goes out and they teach 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and some 9th grade.
Wow.
And there's a lot of topics that we cover, not just, topics about drugs and alcohol, but we also talk about, digital safety. We're talking about how to be resilient online. And we talked a little bit about bullying. And this is going to talk to, and then one of our lessons actually specifically talks about pausing and looking at what you would say. Would you say this to this person if they're directly in front of you?
Oh, that's a good way to look at it,
And
too.
yeah, one of the, actually, so because our lessons are written on the 21st learning style, which is the foundation of the state requirements, our lesson plans are also looked at the school district, so they meet the requirements of the school district. So just if it was a teacher, not law enforcement, but it's everything is certified, our lesson plans. But one of our lessons that we do is we actually have the kids sit there and say hi, like, I'm happy to see you, and teach the kids to look at body language. So when you see someone you haven't seen in a long time, your body lights up, your face lights up,
Yeah.
right? You're excited, you're leaning into the person. And then
Right.
when you see someone, you're like, oh, hey, hi. You know,
Yeah.
so we actually have a little task where we say, hey, get to know each other. Like, I want you to say hi to this person in this manner.
Right.
And then we say, okay, now we need to say, like, I don't like what you're wearing to their face. And even though the other person that's receiving that message knows what is going to be said, and it's only they're saying it because it is, it affects you anyways.
Oh, yeah.
And that person, even though they know it's coming, naturally has that like closed down, like that wasn't very nice facial expression. So we're actually teaching kids to recognize body language because when we talk to the devices, we don't get that feedback.
Right.
So that's one of the lessons that we teach, and it's multiple levels. It's layered. But then I also want to show that we have resources for the parents as well,
Oh, that's
because
good.
just like, you know, people that are out there like, well, I don't know what's Snapchat and what does
Right.
it mean? How do I know if my kid is using it? Because I tell you, more than likely they're using Snapchat, Instagram, WhatsApp, or something, some kind of form of communication versus traditional texting.
Right.
So we at the Sheriff's Office, our YES instructors, we have parent academies. And what these parent academies do is they teach you what we are teaching the kids a little bit. I mean, it's about a 60 minutes to 90 minutes, usually around 90 minutes, because we kind of talk about everything. So we kind of give you a brief lesson of what the kids are getting. We have question and answer time, and we give you resources. And then we started a thing this year where we wanted to make the parent academies a little bit more often.
Okay,
So we're
okay.
holding them at our substation. So if you are familiar out there listening to us, if you're not familiar where our substation is, it's the Highlands Ranch substation. It's 9250 Zotos Way in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. And in the community room, every month we are having a parent academy. And we've mixed up the hours, you know, so it could be like if you're like, hey, I got to work in the evening, so I could go in the morning. Well, we have a session in the morning. Maybe I want to do a lunch and learn. We have one in the afternoon. Or you're like, I work the traditional 9 to 5 or whatever. I need to be able to go in the evening after I pick up my kids.
Right.
So we have an evening session. So for you out there listening, I'll give you a quick next 2 months on August 19th, which is coming up really quick. We are doing a parent academy at this substation. This is going to be one of our lunch and learns from 11:30 to 1. And then September 12th, we have a morning session from 8 o'clock in the morning till 9:30. And in October 22nd, from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. So that's the next 3 ones we have. And I'm sure if you have people out there that want, we advertise those on a regular basis. We do like people to RSVP. So if you watch us on our social media of Twitter, Nextdoor, and our Facebook page, we'll have those dates out there so you can look. And if you weren't able to remember those as I spelled them off real quick.
I think we put them on our social media. Thanks, Lieutenant Bronner. All right, Sergeant Tucker, Lieutenant Bronner, thanks so much for visiting with us today and giving us a rundown about our school resource officer program. I hope it resonates with the listeners that they know that we're working really, really hard in school and out of school to keep their kids safe. Again, thanks so much for being here with us today. Thanks to listeners. Make sure you follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and we look forward to our next episode.